if you can just tell me, so the Phoenix Society started in, let's say, 1980, 81, 82?
No, probably 82, 83.
Okay. So if you can just tell me again how you happened to know Phoenix Society.
Okay, well, this time I can remember it a little bit better than I did last.
Oh, that's maybe also good.
I was actually sitting in the reception of the divorce lawyer, reading
Okay.
Fair Lady,
Okay.
when I saw a letter to the editor that was talking about a husband who dresses with ladies' underwear. What's the matter with him? What can I do? And the reply was to contact the Phoenix Society at a PO box address in Para, which in fear and trepidation I did. I wrote to the address and I got a reply from Marlene. And Marlene gave me her telephone number and I phoned and we made an arrangement to meet. Now, I was still working. I was in the process of getting divorced at this stage.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to visit Marlene, and it was quite a shock because Marlene, and when I'm talking about Marlene, I'm talking about the person you see. You talk to the person you see.
So she was dressed up. She presented as Marlene.
When she presents as Marlene, she's Marlene. When she is dressed as a man, he is Tubby.
Okay.
So, and I'll try and be as specific as I can for that. And we adopted that early on. It was a courtesy and it worked well. And when I was there for the first time, it was quite a shock to see Marlene was there, Marlene's wife was there, and an adopted child was there as well. And that they were living sort of happily ever after.
Mm-hmm. And in the same house, and Marlene is dressed.
Marlene is dressed. Yeah, there's no funny business. It was also very nice to realize that Marlene, here I've got to be careful because the terms get a bit difficult. Marlene was not gay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Although Marlene liked dressing as a woman, maybe not when she was dressed as Marlene, but she still looked to her wife for release. And I was having trouble accepting myself, and I knew I wasn't gay. So to meet somebody who wasn't gay, but also liked dressing up was, like meeting somebody who I could relate to for the first time. Now, that was probably 84, 85-ish. I think I can give you exact dates if you want them.
Well, we can look it back in the magazine. So that's not,
and,
early 80s.
Early, well, not too early. Mid-80s. And I came in and I got involved. The Phoenix Society in those days was by name more than anything else. Marlene on her own had a little computer and a dot matrix printer, and she used to publish a little magazine called FanFare, which she'd started writing, basically to keep contact with people who felt the same. If we had a meeting at Marlene's place, there were, generally speaking, not more than one or two other people present. So the Phoenix Society, by and large, existed in the postbox.
Mm-hmm.
It was a list of names and addresses. Marlene made her magazine, put it into a plain brown envelope, and posted it to the name and address given. We had no idea whether those were real or whether they were made-up names or whether the postbox was rented specially.
Yeah, maybe rented somewhere else, and the person just go and fetch that type of post.
Yeah. And it stayed that way until right towards the end, when I think at one stage both Marlene and I were up in Joburg, and we met quite a few other Phoenix members in Joburg. I remember a time when we all got together for a dinner one night at a restaurant. And here's what almost looks like a complete table of women sitting around there. Quite often it was man and wife and all that kind of stuff around, but woman and woman, And the restaurant owner was as gay as a coot. I mean, this was in Hillbrow somewhere. And he thought this was absolutely priceless to have this crowd here. And we challenged him. We said, okay, now go around and now you identify the real women here. And there was one member in particular that Amanda, and he said, no, Amanda was the genuine woman. Yeah, so after meeting, I was living on my own at that stage. I'd moved out. Barbara had moved out Christmas Eve a while back. And being on my own, it was very nice to have a home-cooked meal every now and then. And I have to say, the number of times I rolled up just before dinner, I must have been a pain, a real pain. Because I remember them complaining that, if we knew you were coming, we would have taken some stuff out of the freezer. Thick skin that I had, I still carried on coming. And I ended up assisting Marlene as membership secretary.
Okay.
Writing letters to various people. For a long time, I had a lot of the correspondence. I kept it. And it was used once in some research or others. I just cut out all the names and that kind of stuff first, left the letters themselves.
Yeah.
But the letters were from all over the world. I mean, we had some from Australia, we had some from England, we had some from America. We even had some from Apartheid South Africa. Yeah, and that basically continued until about 1980. Where are we? No, memory's getting bad there. But the Phoenix sort of dwindled after a while.
Oh,
because
it fizzled out.
Marlene kept on saying every year that she had enough, she wanted out. And nobody would come to take over and this kind of stuff. And eventually somebody from Joburg did. That's how it happened.
Okay.
And the control of the Phoenix did move from Marlene in Joburg to somebody else up in Joburg.
From Marlene in Cape Town.
Yes.
Too.
Yes. And that carried on for a year or two, and they produced copies of the FanFare, which I don't think I've got. They were big A4 size.
Oh, okay. Whereas these ones are the
These
small
ones are the small ones, yeah. Interesting. I wonder what's happened to those. Maybe we should try and get hold of Amanda and find out, because I think she might know.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, so I think that sort of answers your first question.
So that was the first question. The other question I wanted to know is, so was it really the personal energy and passion, if I can call it that way, of Marlene? What made it happen? I mean, today we have this knowledge of Facebook and internet and email, and there's WhatsApp. I mean, there's 3 million platforms where you can get hold of a person. In this case, you have a post box and the Telkom telephone line. So is that what made it run?
It was Marlene desperately trying to reach out to similar people. Yeah, without a doubt. There was no internet. There was no Facebook, as you say, none of that. And I can't stress how difficult it was to get information in those days.
Maybe that is then what, because today if you don't find a Marlene, or you don't find the Phoenix Society, or you don't find, I mean, actually how T-Junction fizzled out, because the interest just, because there's so much information on your laptop, on your desktop, at your table.
You don't have to go anywhere.
So I wonder if that was part of the magic that made it happen and last for so long, is the fact that that was your only source of information.
I think definitely. Because we ended up becoming affiliated to the Beaumont Society in England, which was similar. We were affiliated with something in Australia. In fact, one of the Australian branch, I think, awarded Marlene a Golden Pen Award or something like that for spreading knowledge. You know?
Yeah.
Because the idea of the Phoenix really was the FanFare magazine.
Okay.
So it was very difficult for a lot of people because the FanFare magazine was the Phoenix, as far as they were concerned.
It was more actually. Yes, the get-togethers was actually much less.
The get-togethers were a couple of people in Cape Town.
Because the other people are spread out all over. So
all over the world.
Yeah.
All over the world. And that's the important thing. I can't recall exact membership, but roughly speaking, I think at the maximum time, let's say there were about 25 members. And I think in all the time that I was visiting Marlene, I probably met less than 5.
In the whole total of time? Or
in the whole meeting? Total of time.
You only met 5
I only met 5 other people, yeah.
And that's basically obviously Cape Town based.
Yeah.
Yeah, or besides the 2 times besides the time that you and Marlene went to Johannesburg.
That was a lot later.
Yeah.
It was already a lot later. Okay. After the control of Phoenix had moved to...
Oh, okay. So, okay.
Yeah. Okay. But one of the things that ultimately proved difficult in the end was because the majority of people who were getting the FanFare were totally and utterly closeted. It was very difficult to actually get face-to-face communication because you would need to have somebody who was prepared to meet another person face-to-face, albeit as another person. And I've got an interesting story where there was one person who used to travel down from Joburg on business. His firm rented a flat in just opposite the gardens. And once every 6 months or so, I'd get an invite to go and visit her. And I visited her, and we were quite friendly. I was in Joburg once, and I visited her at home. I was invited, but I never met him. And then one day, I was driving in Joburg. No, sorry, I was driving in Cape Town, in the vicinity of the Long Street bars.
Okay, yeah.
And I was stopped at a robot, and I saw somebody standing on the opposite side of the road looking at me. It was a guy, and he was waving.
But
I had no idea who it was. And I can only think that it was the guy who used to come down to Cape Town, who I was meeting as a woman. Because in my car, I was still Joy.
Yeah,
because at that time, I'd transitioned. Yeah, so people were meeting me, but the others were still in the closet. So they didn't identify themselves when they were in the not dressed form, except for that one case, which might have been.
Most potentially.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I still don't know.
So then, as far as I can recall in previous conversations and obviously some news clippings and stuff, I gather that there's certain newspapers or magazines that was kind of like quite supportive by publishing your letters and to the editor and so. Which ones were more, if I could say, frequently used or?
In those days, we had Scope. And Scope was possibly the riskiest, risque, I don't know how you spell the word. But they would publish things that other places wouldn't touch. And strangely enough, also, we got quite a lot of coverage in Huisgenoot U. And I think I had an article in both or something like that. The article in Scope was very fair. I had a journalist who came here to the flat, interviewed me, and I must say that the tone of the actual article in the magazine was very much exactly what we talked about.
You said the Scope magazine published well articles. What is the Scope magazine? when you say they were willing to put risque content, so what was the Scope magazine?
Well, Scope magazine has disappeared, so it's very hard to sort of say what it was, but it was a magazine that spoke about things that a lot of other magazines wouldn't touch. That's probably one of the easiest ways of putting it. If you wanted articles about topics that were sort of fringe, in other words, they touched on transgenderism, but in those days it was transvestites. Whereas
that was
cross-dressing transvestite, where the majority of other magazines in those days were probably more conservative. So I suppose if I have to find the bottom line, they were not conservative. They probably pushed quite a few boundaries.
Because they usually have like a few centerfold photos and.
Not like Playboy. Don't.
Not to that extent. So they were quite uniquely positioned, as what I can remember also.
I think so.
Because they were not on your Playboy or Hustler level,
no.
But
Playboy and Hustler were plain sex magazines.
Exactly, like
the Scope was the closest you can get to Scope would be the You or the Huisgenoot or something these days.
Yeah, if you could have pushed it to the edge.
Pushed it a little bit further. Yeah. And I think I did have an article in You, and I think I've had articles in Scope. So, Scope would cover an article about the lady boys in Siam or somewhere like that. Making, jazzing it up a little bit and that kind of stuff. But at least they would discuss that kind of stuff.
And then would the Phoenix Society sometimes deliberately actually go place news letters or content or ads in newspapers or magazines?
The Phoenix Society as such, no.
So how did it happen that when they publish an article, there's this box, like if you want to find out more? How did that happen?
It happened because of somebody called Doug. Doug lived in Durban.
Okay.
And Doug was a stirrer.
Oh, okay.
Doug would write letters to the editor, assuming a persona.
Okay.
So it's quite likely that the letter to the editor that I responded to was written by Doug.
Okay.
Who was acting like, he wrote the letter from a woman's point of view to pose the question in a public magazine where it would be answered. By stating not that he was a man who liked getting dressed up, but saying,
I am the wife. Yes.
Yes.
And so did Doug do that a few times?
Yes.
Assuming different wives or different scenarios?
Yes, he would do that quite regularly. And he was also the most severe critic of FanFare.
Oh, okay.
We would quite often get a report back after an issue went out, listing every single error that he could find on every single page and cucking us out from a great height. But there were two personalities to Doug. And which one came to the surface depended on how low the bottle was.
Okay.
So Doug, when the bottle is full, was a very mild-mannered person. Doug, when the bottle was empty, was horrible. He was destructive. He was abusive. I don't think I ever had the pleasure of meeting him, but that was Marlene's interpretation for me. Okay.
So then, the Phoenix Society, okay, you only met 5 in person. And then even thinking years back years later in Johannesburg, was there mostly only white people that belonged to the Phoenix Society? Or do you think there was a mix? Because you don't know exactly.
I can answer that exactly. We had one person of color. And we had one person who was the same person,
Mm-hmm.
who was a female to male crossdresser, who has been a member of Gender Dynamics, and who is no longer with us.
Yeah. No, you can mention the name because, I mean, it's anyway in the archive.
Carl Karen, yeah.
Yeah.
Carl Karen was came to a meeting at Marlene's place with his girlfriend.
Of the time, yeah.
Of the time, and this time I'm saying his the other way around.
Yes, because he was now dressed as Carl.
Yes. And Carl had a difficult time of it because he didn't fit any mold in those days. And I think he might have had other issues because frequently I would get a phone call or a communication that he was actually in Lentegeur. And I think the people at Lentegeur didn't know what to do with it. And so I'm actually glad that Carl achieved a reasonable degree of resolution before he passed on.
And how was it in the group dynamic if he was there? Because number one, he's now male presenting or masculine presenting, whereas the other ones in the group is female or feminine presenting. So there's the one difference, and then the fact that he's colored in the other one. So was it any different the evenings he was there? No, it was just fine like that.
He was there.
Yeah, he was there, and that's done. That's how it was. And no one, there was no...
No, there was no tension or anything. I remember in one of the FanFare articles, there's a photograph of him sitting with his girlfriend. And I think the photograph actually says something like, our only person of colour that we've had. Yeah, I remember something that. Like that. Yeah, or the only man between, or whatever. There was some reference of it, our only something. I know what photo you speak of. He sat so on the floor. Yes. The group photo. So, was there only in South Africa now the Phoenix Society and Cape Town, the Base, and then to Johannesburg, but there was definitely people from other areas in the country that... I know of somebody who was in, as I said, Botswana, quite a mouthful. There were lots of people scattered at different places. I don't recall the addresses, but it was scattered. Yeah, it was scattered all around. Yeah, you know. And what made it happen? Like, was like the envelopes and the printing paper and the stamps, and that was just all Marlene's effort, and that's what she wanted. Or did people contribute a bit? Or? No, there was a membership fee. Okay, so which covered those type of things. Yeah, and I mean there was a membership fee and a constitution. Okay, which I've given a copy of when I did the photocopies. At least, when you mustn't forget the memory stick. Okay, yeah, we will do that. Yeah. And the membership fee covered the cost of postage and all that kind of stuff, but there was no profit in it. No, I don't mean that way, but I mean, like who paid for all of the stamps, especially when you say some envelopes are sent overseas. So, I mean, that accumulates the cost, if it's, even if it's backed in, but I mean, it's still more expensive than national. The idea was that the membership fee would cover all the postage expenses. Yes. And essentially, the purpose of FanFare was contact and spreading information. The FanFare, at least Phoenix, did run a member-to-member contact system. If you wanted to contact a member, say, for example, by an article in the newspaper, or by an article in FanFare, you knew that there was a member called Avril who lived somewhere. And if you wanted to write a letter to Avril, you would write a letter to the Phoenix Society. Inside would be an envelope addressed to Avril. The inside would be an envelope with Avril's name on it. Yeah. No address. Yeah, because then the secretary would then put in the address. Avril's address and post it. and the process would be repeated the other way.
Whenever replies on the thing. Okay, so it was a very closed, like that's really underground. That's
totally
really
closeted. And I think it would have perhaps have gone on for quite a lot longer. But rumor had it, I don't know because I didn't experience it, but Tubby said that he was visited by the special branch who wanted all this information. They wanted this, that, and the other thing. They thought we were running a secret terrorist organization or something like that. And they wanted every single document and all this kind of stuff, which he wouldn't allow them to take. And they said, well, we'll be back with a warrant or something like that. And after they'd gone, he threw it all away, including all the personal diaries of mine, which I had given him for his own use for FanFare. Yeah. And I stressed I want it back. And things like my diary, like the diary that I wrote when I went to Southwest Africa, as it was then, called, in 1983, to get to know myself because my marriage was on the rocks. And I poured my heart out there for 3 weeks, like a page, 2 pages, 3 pages a day. All of that went. Oh. So, yeah, I'm very cross about that. But I think that frightened Marlene and probably was the thing that caused her to finally say no. No, she can't continue. She wasn't. But because if the special, did they actually ever turned up again? I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, so I wonder how it leaked that I knew it was there. Maybe one person in the inside was too tough. Maybe somebody wondered what all these things addressed to the Phoenix Society were, and opened the mail or something like that, and thought that this is funny, thought it was suspicious, and I think they thought it was a cover for something else. Yeah, for something else. I think they thought it was a cover for child sex, which is why they were quite interested. Yeah. And I ended up getting a call once from Saudi Arabia or somewhere like that, phoning me direct. This is sort of before we had direct dialing. Wanting to know if I could arrange some boys or something for somebody, Sort of speaking in code, but making it very clear. Like, what we are after. This is not a cross-dressing situation. This is actually looking for something. This is child sex. They wanted child sex. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, so... But, the whole thing is that I've got some notes there on some interesting personalities. I've tried removing all the surnames. Yeah, that is so, at least. And I can anyway go ahead and make a pseudonym also. Or is that already pseudonyms then? No. Okay, so I will then anyway make pseudonyms. The names are the names. Yeah, so I'll make pseudonyms in that case. Yeah. I've just knocked out the surnames. So I've got some photographs. I've got the scan of the transgender phenomenon and that. I think those were educational. Yes. Because Phoenix did two things. We tried, one, to have educational articles interspersed with some personal stories and interspersed with some fiction. Okay. Where one or two people were actually quite good at it. Yeah. And they would write a story about, sometimes it was aliens landed and zapped them and suddenly they became a female, what they'd always wanted. This kind of stuff. Sounds crazy, but it's for people who were completely closeted in those days. That is the only reality. Yeah. And the Phoenix also produced a couple of same size as the FanFare A5. Little books of fiction stories. Okay. I think some of them are advertised in the FanFare as well. You can see. Yes, you can cross-reference and Murder in Panties sticks in my mind. Somebody came up with the whole story. Yeah. Do you happen to know
maybe through the networks and talking with people back then, or anyways, do you happen to know what is the oldest time back in South Africa where people could have in this country surgery?
To answer you, I don't know for sure, but I can tell you one thing. You're going to be totally and utterly surprised as to where it was happening.
Kingston, Kingsbury, and Durban had Addington.
No.
Where?
Wynberg Military Hospital.
Yeah, no, that I know. But so what is
I think Wynberg Military goes back furthest.
Because I came across a story. It's actually not really a story. Can you remember that police, high ranking police officer,
Major Burger?
Piet Bijleveld?
No.
He was known as the South African serial killer investigator. He was based in Johannesburg, and he solved a huge amount of serial killing crimes in our country. That was not the only type of crimes, but he was an extremely esteemed inspector. And I read his biography. It is a journalist that maybe for over the span of 3 or something years go and visit him and had talks like this and come back and keep on until she wrote his biography. And so throughout, they would cover different topics, and then sometimes they use cases as examples to talk us to. And like how these things always come back to, that's my field of interest too. And this story, the chapter or this part's name is, and you will immediately know. I think that it was speaking in those codes in the Times of the Scope magazine. The chapter was titled "Woman Floating on the Pool, Man on the Morgue Table." So this woman was a boutique owner in Johannesburg and Sandton, and her boyfriend, I would imagine to say blankly, it was one of our first transgender hate crimes. She had a boyfriend, I think he was a little bit younger than her, and at some stage they had a hectic fight. And she kind of like taunted him, because, and he murdered her and pushed her in the swimming pool. So when the police came, there was a woman with a dress on floating in the swimming pool, and then in the morgue when they did the autopsy. So then only, with that investigation, the family started speaking. The family vowed and always supported her. So she was completely stealth. No one ever knew. Obviously, this lover or boyfriend or something knew. But her whole family, because she had contacts and ties with them, and they vowed to never spoke about it and then it came out. And that was in the early 90s, and at that time it said she had her surgery something like 20-25 years ago, which means it is like flipping far back. It's like in the late 60s.
Okay, now I've got no.
So I tried to Google that a little bit. I got clips, but so I wondered if you know what is what. So not the hospital really, but what is the reference of the longest ago surgery that you know about?
In South Africa?
Yeah, I'm speaking of South Africa.
No.
Well, if there's a South African who flew out and come back, but I mean, I was in because that happened. That surgery was in the Addington or Kingsbury, one of the two hospitals in Durban.
Okay. No, I don't know for sure. I do know though that when I was membership secretary of Phoenix, and I was trying to get onto hormones, it was recommended that I go to see a doctor in Durban. I don't recall the name of him now. But 2 or 3 of the people in Durban said he's the person you want to speak to. Because I know there was years back, long before years back, Durban was the center of this surgeries. Sorry. No. I just thought, we have this conversation, I can tell as well. So it was so interesting to me. I mean, I read for a complete distraction, I read some police officer's biography. Okay, another true story is in front of me. You just keep on coming back to me. It doesn't matter where I go to. Well, the only reference that I know is that in the old days, certainly I experienced it. There was no transgender state as Marlene and I defined it.
Okay.
Please understand, I'm now talking about cross living. Cross living with hormonal changes, not just cross dressing.
Yes,
Because
yes.
cross dressing is something that you put on and take off.
Yeah, yeah.
Cross living is what we now, well, I think the modern transgender umbrella is even wider.
Yeah.
But in those days, we had transvestite, transgender, transsexual. So a transgender person has not had surgery or has had partial surgery. And the link with this, with Weinberg military, is that in those days, the psychologist said, you got to be one or the other. And gay people in the military they tried to knock the gayness out of them, or they offered them a choice. We'll make you a woman. There was no in between.
Yeah, like you can't faff around.
You can't faff around. And I think because of that, there were a lot of ops that were done long ago that I'm going on hearsay. So
yeah, because I also via the military stories have hearsays, and yeah, there is some information. Surely there is. Yeah. So.
I mean, if you really want to, why not contact Weinberg military and ask them?
I wonder if they will be open with that information.
They probably won't.
That's the point. I went years ago, if I say years ago, one can go and work out whenever Grooteskier Hospital had its 70th birthday or anniversary, what you call it, celebration. So we already had an office in Lafland, the gender dynamics office. I would say 2008, 9 max, somewhere there was when Grooteskier was 70 years old. So there was a thick book like this that was launched. And it was a whole academic team, maybe a team of 3 people for like 5 years up to the 70. It was one of their big projects to publish this book about everything of Grooteskier. Obviously, Chris Barnard was in there, and the whole katoets. I searched through that book launch and I asked the team eventually, in the Q&A, if they came across any surgeries. Nothing, nada, nothing. They refused to believe because they were through all the hospital systems. Oh God, files. Exactly. It was there in book launch. They said there's nothing. I said, I know people that had surgery here. So one of 2 things. They, as researchers, didn't know to look for that. So they didn't ask the right questions. And
I would say it's probably that.
That is, yeah, you have your cisgender heteronormative lens on, and that is not a possibility. Therefore, you were not looking for it.
Because I can give you.
Karen Parks were working there with the team.
Karen Parks was way down the line.
But that's what I'm saying. So, in the time span of their book, there was surgeries because in the 70s years of Grooteskier, there was flippant surgeries.
I'm talking about...
Even before Karen Parks.
I'm talking about the first visit that I made to Grooteskier.
Yourself as an individual.
I was still working, and I saw a Dr. Hemphill. Dr. Hemphill, one word, yeah.
Yeah, but as you spell it,
Hemphill.
Yeah, like Hemphill, but one word, yeah?
Yeah. Dr. Hemphill was the psychologist who evaluated people. Dr. Hemphill had a very simple philosophy. You were either male or you were female. And if you were female, you had to act like,
So like this over-feminine... Like acting. Actually, acting is the word here.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because other women don't even sit and act like this.
Exactly. But unless you fitted that criteria, you didn't qualify. So
and the reverse of
my first attempt was to get treatment through Grooteskier. I was bombed out totally.
Because you were not... Yeah.
I then tried again about 4 or 5 years later, where I saw another doctor. His name slips me at the moment. He was he a urologist or was he a hand guy? Anyway, I think in my records I've got the letter that I wrote them after he turned me down. Now he turned me down again because I was already on Francisco's books as non-operative transsexual.
Wow. By their diagnosis
By
you say I'm a no-op.
No.
It is them who say this is not possible.
That's why Hemphill had one objective, and that's my interpretation of it, and that was to say no.
You had to fight so hard to actually get him a yes.
He was the proverbial gatekeeper.
Yes, okay.
And his job was to say to all these crazy people who come, no, you can't. And he had a reputation for that. So I think at the same time that I was at the meeting waiting for my appointment, Mike, who was on the Sunday Times and all that, actually was in that same meeting, waiting at the same time. Also got kicked out. And I'm talking about, I was still working. And I stopped working at 84, 85.
Yeah, so this is before that.
I think it's way before that. Because how I met Karen Park might fit into this whole story. Karen Park's father was a lawyer.
Okay.
Associated with Durban University, if I can remember correctly. He was given the brief of rewriting the laws governing sex change.
Okay. That sex change law that changed in 1992?
No.
Oh, before that still?
Before that
still go back, okay.
Yeah. And there, they were still hung up about the fact a marriage is a union between a man and a woman. So who's a man and who's a woman? And once you got past that, the next thing was, okay, so you were Joe Bloggs. Your parents owned a castle in Germany. And they left it in their will to Joe Bloggs.
So,
But you've now had surgery and you Jane Bloggs.
So sorry, it's not you in it. It's not you.
Is it or isn't it you?
Yeah, but I mean, that's how they thought.
Actually, no.
Oh, really?
Actually, no, because they said it's the same person. Because they didn't acknowledge that the sex change had changed anything.
So look how the law contradicts itself at the one area to the next area. Okay.
You know, so it was this kind of thing that they were looking at. They were looking at it from a clinical, legal perspective. They didn't interview anybody and actually find out how transgender, transsexual people felt.
Okay.
It
was like a clear-cut clinical, legal.
Yeah. If we make a man now a woman from such and such a date, are they a woman from that date, or were they always a woman? Which is the thing that the latest law nicely solved by changing the birth certificate. Because the old law never changed your original birth certificate.
Okay.
It issued an amended birth certificate.
Yes. So basically two exist, the original one and
the original and the new one. Yeah.
Okay. So then, so Karen Park's dad was this lawyer.
Yes.
That had to do this. And then she just had an interest in it, or how did she?
Well, she was studying.
She was medical, so clearly
she was studying to be a psychologist.
Okay.
A Jungian psychologist. And somewhere along the line, her father, who I met once at UCT, told me that his daughter was a psychologist because I needed a psychologist to give me a psychological assessment for my divorce proceedings.
Okay.
That's the link. And he said that I should go and speak to her. She already on her own was doing some kind of research into the Jungian aspects of transsexuality.
Okay.
Now, the big difference between Jung and Freud is that Jung was saying the illness often hides the cure.
Okay.
So in other words, if you look at the illness, what's the illness trying to say?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody wants to be a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they should be a
Something
woman.
help them. They must be a woman.
Yeah. So rather than Freud, who said it's all a waste.
What a soft father and a strong mother and all that blah
had
blah.
to do with sex. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. No, Jung looked at it a different way.
Mm-hmm.
So I benefited because Karen gave me, in total, I think from beginning to end, something like 5 years of Jungian therapy at 10 Rand a session.
Yo.
You know, and you just can't get it these days.
Yeah.
And yes, she came to my divorce hearing, and she did stand up for me.
Okay.
But the magistrate enjoyed himself. You know, here I was in the dock as pretty as I could be, and he turns around and says to me, "Excuse me, I don't get people like you often here. What do you do for sex?"
Wow.
You know, I just sort of looked, and he made a ruling anyway, and because at that stage I was still without a job at all.
Okay.
He said, "I'll give you 3 months. You're going to be back here in 3 months' time, and I don't care what it is. You will have a job."
Wow.
So that sort of put me in a fix. So sort of the first job that came along, you know, I was almost obligated to take it, which wasn't too bad. It was a computer job, but I was not only was I paid a woman's salary, I was also underpaid. You know, but yeah, I think that's the context where it all fits in.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere I think I've got it documented again.
Yeah, we must look through that.
En, wat nog?
No, I think that's it. Maybe what we can do is while we look with the on the computer with the documents and the memory stick, that we actually keep the recorder on for if you see something, you know, then it's easier for me. You know what I'm saying? It makes practical sense actually that way. Oh, okay, check that.
I've given you the transgender phenomenon.
So that's that one, yeah, that you scanned.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I numbered the pages from 1 to 9, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. Okay, so that's in the right sequence.
Okay.
I think that the scans are quite readable.
Okay.
Let's just have a quick
look. Yeah, they are, yeah.
Okay, there you are. I mean, there might be a word or so that's difficult, but you can probably interpret it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's both of those.
Okay.
Where am I?
Or just go back space.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. What
then
is
I've got this for you, for Liesel, the transgender. Phoenix Society, I was membership secretary. I assisted Tubby, published various articles, wrote transgender phenomenon with Marlene, not included, as I got pissed off with Marlene while entering it in 2002. Okay, so that basically means that by 2002, I had grown, or progressed sufficiently that what Marlene was saying struck me as being far too authoritarian.
Okay.
She was saying, this is the way it is.
Like there's no other way. Like
there's no
forgetting about the fact that we're all actually exploring here. Like we all don't have the answers here. Like it's going to be like this.
That was Marlene. And it took me a while to realize it. Because Marlene thought she had been visited by God, and now I'm exaggerating, but she'd visited by God, and God had told her the transgender Bible. And so it's her duty now to preach it. Okay.
Okay, there you give some notes.
There's some thoughts on the members.
Okay.
I met Lynn often. Met her wife, nice person. One day the man that I did not recognize waved at me in Cape Town.
Oh, so that is the one you told me about there close to the
Could have been Lynn dressed as a man.
Yeah.
Someone I never met. Okay. Anne at Melkbos used to get dressed up in a bikini in the middle of winter, then phone Marlene. Ernest, letters from Apartheid South Africa. Carl, Charles, Karen. TS or lesbian? Question. in and out of hospital, still not happy years later, brief contact via Dean. Okay, that's not been updated.
Yes, that is your thoughts of long ago.
Those are my thoughts of long ago.
Can you remember more or less when that thoughts were?
Well, it must have been while I was, we're talking about the 80s.
I mean, so the thoughts, these thoughts here
Yes.
are your thoughts in 1980 something. So circa 1980s.
Okay.
So that's more or less, because I mean...
more or less.
Yes, because me and you both know Charles' story.
Yeah.
It's different today.
Yeah. Prior, repaired pianos, amateur astrologer, drew my chart. I tried to introduce him to Gaza. He came, spoke to no one, and then left. Pops up again at the Triangle Support Group.
Yeah, like years later, yeah.
Gene used to phone me whenever his wife went out to book club on Tuesday nights, once a month. Obsessed with security. Refused to give me a contact number to use with discretion only. So I refused further contact. I got to the point where I said, if I can't get hold of you, you can't get hold of me.
Yeah, it has to be a two-way street. Yeah.
And so that...
Yeah, like get over yourself, because I'm also in your situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like
and
that.
It was an unfair relationship.
Yeah.
Okay, I put him the phone down. He refused, so I put down. He rang once more, saying I was cross last time. I told him I was not at all cross. No phone numbers, no talk. Glynis and Anthony, that was a hubby and wife. Where are we there? And Antoinette, Anthony Antoinette, crazy pair. I think she was having lesbian affairs while her husband got dressed and went looking for males, as he was now a woman when dressed. Okay, he was I think the first case who he switched sexual preference when he was dressed.
Oh, okay.
Okay, otherwise, basically everybody maintained their physical and anatomical sexual preference.
Okay.
Yeah. Glynis finally pissed me off by giving my phone number to somebody by the name of Dave, who pestered me for years wanting to talk dirty. Richard, TV, closet gay, found transvestites attractive, used to get dressed himself with a moustache and makeup, and then he would gaze at himself and say how sexy he looked. Crazy. Sandra from PE, okay. Went overseas, had... No, sorry, this is another one. Spoke in a strange, squeaky voice, not natural, had fantasies about being raped, wanted to convert the world to her religion, started a 2-in-1 society. I had no idea whatever happened. Lee Alison Averill, very sad case. Ex-Congo mercenary, she documented in FanFare.
Oh, okay.
With tales about he cut captives' balls off and put them in a vice to get them to talk. She claimed to have been deserted by his mother and was brought up by an aunt. It was his mission to find and murder his mother. So,
like in real life? This is not a story.
No, this is real life.
Hi.
And that made talking to him very, very difficult.
So there was this underlying anger.
Anger.
Yeah.
Threats of suicide if he didn't get his way. Rumor is that he had SO surgery, got married. I've got no proof of that, just Averill said so. Then he went crazy when he discovered that his aunt, who he loved, was his natural mother.
Oh.
Remember, he loved his aunt,
but wanted to murder the mother.
His mother.
Yeah.
He finally committed suicide. Okay.
Okay.
Caused a lot of trouble for a TS nurse at Park Lane Hospital by outing her. Christine, I met in the Dungeon Club. Wife was Elva Lake. I ended up trying to help Elva a lot. Christine denied ever meeting me. Made plan with a wife for me to fly up and chat about her problems. Couldn't go as I was about to go to Durban on business. So was she said, going on holiday. She was in a hotel about 100 yards from me. Then we met and chatted. Robin, okay, that's the surname that I missed.
Oh, okay, I'll take that out then, yeah.
Tall person, not married, finally divorced. Took part in the Mnet article. There was something on Mnet, there was
Okay.
something on Carte Blanche, which was never screened.
Okay.
No, Carte Blanche was screened. There was something on 50/50.
That never screened.
That was never screened. Yeah. Mike.
Yeah, I know that
Enough
story.
of him. Enough of him. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Michelle was another thing, the newspaper article. I've got that, worked for government department, died of blood poisoning, probably from injecting hormones. Now, this is the kind of thing that used to happen quite often. A dominee, basically TV, who could only come to terms by having surgery, and committed suicide the night before he was due to hospital to have the SRS.
Wow.
Dean, one of the most put together chaps I know, lots of time. Okay, Simone, okay, single chapter. I mean, Simone and I crossed paths quite frequently. And in the beginning, Simone didn't fit Tubby's boxes nicely. Because Simone had been male, who was having relationships with men before surgery and all that kind of stuff. And according to Tubby,
that can't
then you're gay.
And Simone said no.
Yeah, Simone said, no, I'm not, I'm a woman. And that didn't fit in Tubby's way of looking at it.
So then, you imagine?
And Gina...
Because Simone is still having a lot of young guys. And, like Hanks and sexy guys. Yeah, I mean,
Simone
she's going at it. She enjoys life.
No, she's enjoying her life.
Yes.
And Sue Erica, it's hard to explain, very good femi image, doesn't want to identify as a male or female. I am me. Doesn't fit the box. So I just left. Okay, should get on well with Estienne. Now, Estienne, I think you know.
Yeah.
Okay, Jane from Pretoria, I've got a photograph or two of her. Was married, then divorced, married a coloured lady far below her class. I don't know why that happened, and I've seen it actually happen quite a few times. She was actually Scandinavian or something. People from outside South Africa came to South Africa and liked people of colour, and got into relationships that basically, okay, I'm speaking as a South African, I would say that instead of going with an educated person, they were actually going for somebody at the servant level. And I'm worried that there was an element of abuse in that.
Or a weird power dynamic. Like, why don't you go for your peer?
Absolutely.
The fact that it's a different race doesn't matter, but why not your peer?
Absolutely.
Why for... If we speak of lower class, you mean not only monetary-wise, but...
No. Every way.
In the academic or intellect or all sorts of ways.
Unequal.
It's a skewed dynamic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Amanda and wife, very good. Eventually had the op as far as I know. Amanda is black belt in karate. Muslim fellow was chasing me. I had to get rid of him because as far as he was concerned, I was presenting as a woman, but he saw me as a guy. So being queer, he could have sex with a woman who wasn't a woman. And nobody would say, he was breaking the commandments.
Oh, so he was, it was a nice cover-up scenario for him, if that could be a reality.
And he wanted it, and I was just telling him, go, I'm not interested.
In weird place.
Wendy from Durban, sad case, phoned every day for ages, ran away to England, leaving the wife and family behind, and had the op in England, bounced the checks for the doc. In England.
Oh.
And no, that wasn't. Okay, Linda and Graham from Joburg, Sandy in Durban, ex-Angolan war, 6 foot tall, see FanFare articles, went to England to have the op, lesbian. I don't know what she's doing now.
Okay. So she then is a lesbian? You mean after all this?
I don't know.
That's what people say. That's...
because as far as I know, she had sex with men as well.
Oh, so...
But she didn't fit. Remember that a lot of this...
Yeah, this is according to the... Yeah. The boxes that people needed to fit in.
The boxes that people needed to fit in.
Yeah, this is according to the... Yeah.
The boxes that people needed to fit in. Yeah. Remember that a lot of this... Yeah, yeah, yeah. The boxes that people needed to fit in. Yeah. The boxes that people needed to fit in. Yeah. The boxes that people needed to fit in. this is one of the later entries on or Anne Kempfers. Wrote a book that was in the Gender Dynamics library.
Oh, okay.
TS, or Too Much Drinking for Me, had the op all over Cape Town newspapers, written book, mentions me, so the lady from Lux Verbi says. I don't think I had a very nice recommendation.
Oh, that's that Anne Beaumont, that one. Was that blonde hair? So yeah, I think she was
and somebody else.
Yeah, I think she came from Holland or something.
Yep. That's
yes,
it.
that person.
That one.
Okay, yeah.
That one. Yeah. Then John was just somebody again who was pestering me for sex. This was the downside of making myself available.
Yeah, now all sorts of people contact you, not only the ones that's actually interested in the.
Yeah. And Natasha at Gender Dynamics, very good. I didn't even read her. And that's all the notes I've got there for the moment.
Okay. So these were basically throughout the different years, the members or the contacts or the people or.
It's a little bit of everything.
Yeah,
a lot of it was documented at that time, but this is an extract from a document that I've got that's probably about 300 or 400 pages long.
Okay.
And what I do is every now and then, as I'm reading through it, I'll make a note to bring it up to date.
Okay.
So I can't categorically say that
yes,
everybody was there.
Yeah. But that kind of like represent the variety of people that was. That's kind of like what this
at that time.
Yes, in the 1990s or whatever. Yeah.
Now I sorted these out. You may or may not have seen some of these.
Some of them, those with the red blouse, but I didn't see them all. But I saw.
No.
I think that first one is the one
that one
used
has been
in the book.
In the book.
And I think in a magazine clipping as well, maybe.
Folder properties. 18 megabytes. I can give you the whole lot.
Yeah, because remember we looked, there was something like 40 or whatever amount. There was a lot of space.
Yeah. So
these are basically your photos. This is not of other people.
This is my photos and photos of others.
Oh, okay. So wherever something goes public, I won't use anything of other people.
So, for example, that's Sandra. Sandra from Durban. When she came here for a weekend, that's me.
Yeah.
Sandra.
Okay.
And the wine farm. We move on. There's some duplicates that you'll see.
Okay, yeah.
That was Tubby's mother.
Okay.
That's Tubby.
Okay, yeah.
Tubby. And that's Tubby's wife.
Okay.
That's me coming up the stairs.
Yeah, this is, yeah.
Yeah, that was the plot next door.
Yeah.
Over there. That's... Sandra flew down for one day, and I kept her so busy that day. She had her hair done in the morning, and we went to the opera or something in the evening.
Wow!
I hadn't budgeted on the fact that I've had my beard removed. Sandra hadn't, so Sandra had to run home to shave. That was me and Richard. Me in the old days reading to the kids. This was at Jane's place. There, that was Jane. That was Alison. She's died recently.
Oh, okay.
Jane and me. That was a wife of somebody who was visiting. That was the person we think might have been Special Branch.
Okay.
And that was Graham somebody or other. A very nice person, so we thought, was the contact with the Dungeon Club, a gay club in Joburg. But got to the point where we were starting to debate issues about sexuality and all that kind of stuff. And we said something and the relationship just split.
Wow.
I don't think she liked something that we said. So, yeah, you can get rid of... There are quite a lot of duplicates there.
And what I will also do is I won't actually really go public with any of these photos where there's other people involved. And if it's yours, like with that other archive, I will say to you, okay, this and this and this photo, do you think that's fine?
Yeah.
No, like so, I will do that.
Me at Arthur Murray's. I'm not sure. That was, I think, the one where I won Sexy Legs or something.
Oh, okay.
No, there we are. Yeah, she was the winner and I came second.
Okay. Yeah, that is that photo.
That's the
Yeah.
look from me. Yeah.
Yeah.